I'm Kris Pursiainen, joined by Kayla Wentzel, and we are honored to be joined now by Brian Mahoney. Brian, I can't even begin to try to introduce you fairly, but to give it a shot, NBA writer for the Associated Press, Knicks, Nets, USAB. We're so glad to have you on and to grab your perspective on both local teams and the playoffs. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. It was a fun year locally this year with two playoff teams. We haven't had that too often in my years doing this.
It was a fun year for me as a Knicks fan. I'll admit it right off the bat that that this was indeed one heck of a year for me. I almost want to just start right there, and to expand to both teams, just the city of New York, basketball. Those two things will be tied forever. What was special about this season, this year? The two playoff campaigns was what you've stated, but there was an energy as someone who was in the Bronx in the air this season that was different. How would you describe that?
There was, and obviously with everything that New York went through over the last year, just having something to kind of celebrate. And the Nets were going to be good all along. I think people knew that. But the Knicks was a complete surprise. None of us saw that coming. And, when they were able to open up to having crowds again and then expand the crowds in time for the playoffs, game one of the Knicks series was one of the best atmospheres I've ever been in. Just such a joy, people being out again, people seeing the Knicks in the playoffs again. You had chills just being there. It was really something.
Yeah, the energy in New York is certainly getting better. It's getting back to normal. It feels like things are starting to come back. So just keeping it local with the Knicks and the Nets, what are some specific things? I know this is obviously very early, but what are some specific things that you'd like to see them be doing in the off season to prepare for next season? I mean, it was a successful year for both of them. I mean, they're not in the finals, but I would say largely considered, it's been a really great year for them. So what are some things you want to see them do to continue to improve on that?
Yeah, I mean, they both kind of know what they need to do. I think the Knicks challenge is a little bit harder. The Knicks need to get another star-type player. I think we saw that in the playoff series. When Atlanta was able to contain Julius Randle, they didn't have that second guy who could step up. There's going to be players out there, but those are hard to get. The Nets, of course, have their superstars. They just have to fill out the bench around them. We saw in the playoffs when Harden was hurt and Kyrie Irving was hurt, there wasn't a lot of stuff around. Kevin Durant, they need to kind of find guys who Steve Nash is confident in off the bench. And plenty of guys will want to come play with those guys, so they should be able to do that.
Again, I mentioned I was a Knicks fan, but I will ask a question about our friends in Brooklyn. Do you think that watching this Clippers team right now, watching the chemistry-related struggles that this squad had last year, kind of maybe as a facet of being a, hey, Kawhi and Paul George, go do stuff team. Did you kind of notice that this year with Brooklyn? Did you think that there was a lack of work experience factor in terms of just these guys sharing an office space together?
It's a challenge in the same way it was for the Clippers last year, and that this was such a weird season. You didn't have the full time to get to know each other, to get to now. Obviously, these guys have a relationship. Kevin Durant and James Harden played together. Durant and Kyrie are friends. They played in the Olympics together. They do have that, but you don't have the course of the whole season to go through road trips and go out. You couldn't go to dinners together, all that kind of stuff where you can get all the other guys included with you. So certainly we saw it happen to the Clippers last year. It's a good point. And we saw it happen to the Nets here. There's only so much you can do on a basketball court. There's all the other stuff that goes into it that they lost time to do.
Right. And so kind of keeping within NBA playoffs, yesterday, the Bucks defeated the Hawks. What are your thoughts on this series? How do you see this kind of continuing to shape out? And the Bucks beat the Nets. So my mom always told me to root for the person that beat you. So are you hoping that the Bucks pull it out over the Hawks, or what are your feelings about this?
That's always been tough advice. Sometimes mom's right. Sometimes I don't know on that one. But I think the Bucks are the better team. I think they're just so big up front, obviously with Giannis and then Brook Lopez up there, and They don't always defend great. Sometimes I think they rely on their offense a little too much. They were the highest scoring team in the league. But, when they lock in like they did last night, I think they can take away a lot of Atlanta's stuff. And I think they should win that series. When Giannis goes to the basket the way he did, there's no stopping him anywhere in the league. So if they play smart and play the right way, they should win that series. But Atlanta, look, they, won on the road in New York. They did it in Philadelphia. We shouldn't rule this team out. They were the best team in the East record-wise for a lot of the season after March when they made the coaching change. So it's a good team right there. But I think the Bucks are a little better.
Kind of a two-parter here. I'll start and say I'm definitely rooting for Milwaukee as a fan of a team that was defeated by Atlanta. Can't stand Trae Young, so I might have to disagree with your mom there, Kayla. I want to ask first about the 4 teams that are remaining. Which of the 4 kind of feels to you like this year's champion? And then wanted to ask about how the fact that there's no LeBron, there's no KD, there's no Steph, and, unfortunately no Kawhi. This playoffs has kind of felt like a passing of the torch playoffs from the LeBron, KD, Curry generation to Spida, Booker, Tatum. Zion didn't make it, but those are his guys his age. Are you feeling that passing of the torch vibe as well?
It'll be interesting because you want to say in some aspects it feels like that, but then you have to sort of say LeBron won't make it back, and it's to me a little early to rule him out. but at the same time, yes, you can kind of see like this is some of these guys' time. Like you say, you look at a Devin Booker and you look at a Trae Young who wasn't in the playoffs before, and all of a sudden, Ayton is having a great playoffs. All these guys who are in the, between 25 and 30 years old are kind of making a great breakthrough. So I hope it continues. We need more fans to get to know these guys and see how great they are. But as far as your first question, I think Milwaukee has a profile of that kind of team where they had kind of the heartbreak 2 years in a row, having the best record in the league, not getting to the finals, and then they sort of upgrade their team a little bit. They make the trade for Jrue Holiday, sort of to be their last piece. So if you had to look at kind of who fits the profile of the teams left, this is their year, Milwaukee seems to be the one I would pick of those 4.
Right. Following along with Milwaukee, I got to know about Giannis. We have debates on this very show on One-on-One Nightly on Wednesdays about whether Giannis is, to use my favorite terms, a Batman or a Robin. I've got to know your thoughts because the Anthony Davis fan club was telling me for a while that AD was a better player. I was like, but now Giannis struggled. What do you make of Giannis? What do you make of his role, his skill that people like to debate? Just the 2-time MVP is a little more controversial than your average 2-time MVP, I think.
I think he is a Batman, and I think he cares enough to improve. Like Giannis could just play the same game he has now for the rest of his career and average 20 and 10 and have a good record and all that stuff. He's just that good athletically. But I think he wants to improve his shooting. I think he wants to become a better teammate, a better playmaker, all that stuff. He just seems to be that kind of guy to me. And there are some guys, look, who don't. There are some guys who, what they are now, they're fine being that. They get a lot of money and they, get a lot of success and a lot of fanfare and all that. So that's fine for them. But I just don't think Giannis is that kind of guy. And I think it will pay off for him as his career goes on.
Right. And kind of moving over now into the Suns Clippers series, who do you think is better out of that series? So Chris Paul just came back. He had a bit of a lackluster performance the other day. So what do you think? Who do you think is going to come out victorious within those 2?
I think the Suns are in better shape in a lot of reasons. Obviously, with Kawhi not being there, the Clippers also don't have Serge Ibaka's hurt, who would have been very important in the series. I think playing against DeAndre Ayton for Phoenix, who's playing, I think, the best basketball of his career in these playoffs. So the Suns, I think, have a lot going for them. With now, the Chris Paul thing was bad timing, but they won those 2 games when he was out, which was important. So assuming, Devin Booker is okay with the nose and, shakes off that bad game the other night, Chris Paul gets back, in good condition after being out, I think there's a lot more to like about the Suns. Can't rule out the Clippers. We've seen them come back from 0-2, 2 rounds in a row. So they're certainly confident, but overall situation right now, I think the Suns have more going for them.
Absolutely. I wanted to get a little towards the off season before we look towards wrapping up here. The Knicks and the Nets, we mentioned their off-season strategies. There's a team in the Atlantic Division though who came to mind. Not to name names, but you were making a point about types of players, and someone on a 5-year, $158 million extension wearing red, white, and blue came right to mind. Do you think Ben Simmons is on the move this offseason?
Very perceptive, Kris. Yes, that's exactly the kind of player we're talking about. Look, Ben Simmons is fine the way he is, but does he want to be better? And if he does, he can fix that stuff. But, I think they have to listen to offers, which, they're going to say listen to offers every time, no matter who the player is. Everybody can be traded. But the key is not to just give him away now, not to say, oh, my gosh, he was terrible. We got to get rid of him. He's still an elite player, just a flawed player. And if they get a great deal for him, you move him. But if you don't, you say, okay, well, we just have to hope that he wants to address his issues and really put the time in and work. And if he does, look, he's already an all-star player, an awesome defensive player, plays on a fast break, fantastic. And, he's got to fix one thing. It's just a matter of it's a lot of time in the gym to do that. And is he that guy to do it?
I think Daryl Morey is asking himself a lot of the same questions that you just posed right now. Because that's a lot of money to be paying while you are finding out the answer to those questions. I've got to throw this in one more geographically seemingly random direction. We're going to bring it all the way down south now. Dallas, Texas, the home of, I'm going to be frank, for me, happily, a lot of chaos. As a fan of the team that owns 2 of their first round picks, I have to be honest and say that all this fallout is popcorn material for me. But with bringing in Harrison, Kidd, these new moves, this new look Mavs team, trying to appease Luka Doncic, what do you make of this situation in Dallas? I mean, it's just complicated, to say the least.
It's been surprising as an outsider. Maybe people who were around the team saw some of this coming, but obviously I did not. They've been, stability for such a long time. Rick Carlisle has been there forever, Donnie Nelson forever. And to see him go within days of each other is really strange. And, look, they have obviously a superstar in Luka, and Jason Kidd, I think, is shown to be a good coach in the NBA and should address some of their issues defensively maybe, but all kind of weird. And, eventually maybe we find out why all this is happening so suddenly. But in the meantime, you just kind of hope for their sake they can steer it through. But if you're looking for chaos in Dallas, as you are, you certainly got it right now.
The coaching market, even with Kidd off of it, is really full still. I feel like of candidates who have paid their dues as assistants or who are qualified enough. With Chauncey Billups going to Portland, it seems Rick Carlisle going to the Pacers, the market's been, like Kidd, having some top candidates plucked from it. Who are some of your favorite remaining coaching candidates, just as a little nod to our off-season segment later in the show, for the available positions?
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned Mike D'Antoni. I would certainly, as 2-time coach of the year, a guy like that, I would certainly want to bring in. And, staying with the Nets, Jacques Vaughn, I think he did a great job at the end of last season when he took over. He's been a head coach before, and it wasn't on a talented team in Orlando, but he showed last year, I think, how good a coach he is. So this is, like I say, there's so many openings this year. There's a nice mix of, guys who have coached before, who are out there, and also guys who, first time get their shot, like Boston is doing. When the quarter of the league essentially has jobs, there's going to be great opportunities. And, some of these, Indiana made a bad move last year. You would think this year's going to be better bringing in Rick Carlisle. And if it is, that's a talented team. But coach makes a big difference, obviously, an understatement there.
Right.
Yeah, I think I might advise our betting listeners to look at some Pacers playoff odds, because I can't see Carlisle going out like that. I liked him for the Bucks job, and I'm curious to hear as well a final thought about Coach Budenholzer and whether you think they should replace him, just because we've talked so much Giannis But I did like this coaching market, and I think there are still some good candidates available too, as you mentioned, Vanterpool, Mosley, some good guys around the league. But before we wrap up, Coach Bud, Brian, if you're Milwaukee, are you done with him?
I would not be. You're still talking about no matter what happens in this series, 2 Eastern Conference Finals in the last 3 years. That's saying something. But the flip side is, again, just same with the Dallas. We're not around them every day. You don't know how are the players relating to the coach, all that kind of thing. And sometimes, no matter how much the team is winning or losing, that stuff gets fractured somehow. You don't really know. But if they had gone out early, then it seemed like it was definite he was going to be gone based on all the rumors. Now, you certainly think, you have a good reason if you're going to make the move, but it'll be interesting to see what happens in this round here if they don't make it.
Yeah, he might have earned his stay another year. We'll have to see. We'll see how the NBA playoffs wrap up. I like the Bucks to win as well, Brian. I think Giannis has something to prove to us as viewers. And that's about it for me, because that narrative is strong enough, as you were saying about Giannis's work ethic, to be it for me. So I'm with you there.
Yeah, either way, we're going to get a great story. Like if it's the Bucks against the Suns, the Suns finally getting there, Chris Paul finally getting a shot. If it's the Clippers and finally getting their finals chance. I mean, and if it's Atlanta, same thing, a team that hasn't been in the finals in whatever it is, 50 years. So, no matter what, we're going to get a great story, and hopefully the fans will tune in, because it's not, as we said earlier, the guys they're used to seeing, but, these are guys who are going to be fun to watch, I think, whoever it turns out to be.
Absolutely. And for the next decade plus, this is going to be good. I'm excited as a basketball fan. Brian, we thank you a million for taking the time to join us on today's show. It was nothing short of fantastic to pick your brain, grab your perspectives on everything going on. We really appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks for having me. I love chatting with you guys.